An HOA Karen thought she could call the cops on a young black kid just for riding his bike in the neighborhood. But the moment the officer arrived, she was left speechless, because the police chief who stepped out of that squad car was none other than the boy's mother. And what happened next turned the entire HOA upside down. It was a bright Saturday morning in Oak Ridge Estates, a suburban neighborhood that prided itself on peace, order, and standards. The lawns were perfectly trimmed, the mailboxes identical, and the HOA board carried more authority than some small-town mayors. But beneath that shiny exterior lurked tension. It often showed up whenever a new family moved in who didn't fit the cookie-cutter image the HOA wanted to project. The Robinsons had just moved into the neighborhood 6 months ago. They were a hard-working family. Mr. Robinson was a high school teacher. Mrs. Robinson, well, nobody knew much about her because she worked odd hours, often gone in the evenings and sometimes late nights. Their 12-year-old son, Jordan, was a bright, respectful kid. He loved riding his bike around the neighborhood, usually practicing tricks near the cul-de-sac. But in Oak Ridge Estates, there was someone always watching. And her name was Karen Whitfield. Karen wasn't just on the HOA board. She was its self-appointed enforcer. She carried a clipboard everywhere, wrote down violations, and even kept a camera on her porch to monitor neighbors' comings and goings. To her, Jordan wasn't just a kid riding his bike. He was a problem. Every time she saw him doing tricks on the sidewalk, she muttered under her breath, "He's going to scratch up the pavement. He doesn't belong here. Where are his parents?" Her bias was clear. She never said a word when the other kids, mostly white, played soccer on the lawn, skated in the street, or shouted late into the night. But Jordan? She saw him as a threat. That Saturday, Jordan was out again riding his bike. He wore his helmet, had earbuds in, and was just practicing wheelies. Karen stormed out of her house yelling, "Hey, you can't ride here. You're damaging HOA property." Jordan politely stopped and said, "Ma'am, I'm just riding on the sidewalk. I'm not hurting anything." But Karen wasn't having it. She pulled out her phone and said loudly, "That's it. I'm calling the cops." "You people don't respect the rules." Jordan froze. His heart pounded. At 12 years old, he had been taught to always be careful around police encounters. He knew he hadn't done anything wrong, but the fear was real. Within minutes, a squad car pulled up. Karen stood triumphantly, arms crossed, waiting to see Jordan put in his place. But when the car door opened, the entire neighborhood gasped. Out stepped Chief Robinson, the newly appointed police chief of the city. She was dressed in uniform, her presence commanding immediate respect. Karen's smug smile evaporated. Her jaw dropped as she realized exactly who this officer was, because Chief Robinson wasn't just the police chief. She was Jordan's mother. "Jordan?" she said firmly but warmly, walking straight to her son. "Are you okay?" Jordan nodded, though his hands were still shaking. She called the cops on me for riding my bike." Chief Robinson turned slowly, locking eyes with Karen. Her voice was calm, but it carried the weight of authority. "Ma'am, did you seriously call emergency services on a child? For riding his bicycle?" Karen stuttered. Well, yes, he was being reckless. Damaging property." Chief Robinson scanned the sidewalk. Smooth, no marks, no damage. She turned back, unimpressed. "There's no damage here. Hal, I don't see a crime." But Karen, embarrassed in front of the gathering neighbors, didn't back down. "This neighborhood has rules," she snapped. "We can't have kids like him thinking they can do whatever they want." The crowd murmured. They heard it, that slip of prejudice. Chief Robinson's face hardened. "Kids like him?" she repeated. "You mean children enjoying their neighborhood safely? Or are you trying to say something else?" Karen's face flushed red. I didn't mean it like that." "Oh, I think you did," the chief cut in. By now, neighbors were pulling out phones, recording everything. Karen, who usually controlled the narrative in HOA meetings, suddenly found herself exposed. Chief Robinson addressed the crowd. "Let me be perfectly clear. False calls to emergency services waste valuable time, put real lives at risk, and can traumatize innocent people, especially children." Her voice lowered, firm but filled with emotion. "And when that call is rooted in prejudice, that's even worse." Karen looked around, realizing she wasn't in control anymore. The story didn't end on the sidewalk. Word spread quickly. Videos went viral. By the following week, The HOA board was forced to hold an emergency meeting. Residents demanded accountability. For years, Karen had bullied neighbors with petty fines, threats, and intimidation. But this was the final straw. Chief Robinson attended that meeting, not as the police chief, but as a mother and homeowner. She stood at the podium and said, "I moved my family here for peace, for safety, for community. What we got instead was harassment. But let me make one thing clear. No one will intimidate my child or any child in this neighborhood ever again." Applause erupted. Even board members who once sided with Karen began distancing themselves. Within weeks, Karen was voted off the board. Her power vanished, and her reputation in the neighborhood was shattered. Life slowly returned to normal for the Robinsons. Jordan rode his bike freely again, this time with even more support from neighbors who now greeted him with smiles instead of suspicion. Karen, meanwhile, became a cautionary tale. People whispered about how her prejudice not only cost her status, but exposed the toxic underbelly of HOA abuse. And as for Chief Robinson, she continued leading her city with strength, but at home she was simply mom, making sure her son knew he was safe, valued, and free to be a kid. In the end, Karen learned the hard way: you never know who you're dealing with. That kid on a bike turned out to be the son of the city's top law enforcement officer. And while she tried to weaponize the system against him, it was the system and the community that turned against her. Maybe next time, she'll think twice before calling the cops on innocents.